Your cooking makes me want to vomit. Flora, my son's wife, whispered this only for me to hear, but I ignored it. Today is my grandson Frederick's birthday party, and we're planning to celebrate it grandly with relatives invited. I didn't want to be swayed by just Flora's opinion. Without minding her, I carried a large platter with meatloaf next. Seeing this, Flora stood up and started yelling loudly. Seriously, what is this? You expect us to eat that? Such tasteless, vulgar food. I don't want to eat it. I've had enough. Flora grabbed the large platter of meatloaf from my hands and slammed it onto the table with force. The relatives looked at Flora with surprised faces. The dish shattered into pieces, and the scattered food stained the clothes of the relatives, who started angrily blaming Flora. My son David also stood up and put his hand on Flora's shoulder to calm her down. Hey, Flora, calm down. You be quiet. Why are there so many country bumpkins here? I'm so sick of it. I feel like vomiting. I shouldn't have come. She then picked up a plate of food left on the table and threw it at me. I felt more disgusted than angry at Flora's behavior. You seem to be mistaken, but I didn't make this. Huh? Then who made this crap? It was me. The voice was so loud it seemed impossible it came from an elderly person, and the glass doors shook. I'm Ashley. Born into an ordinary family, I spent my life without any particular incidents. I did well enough in studies, so I didn't have trouble getting into college. In college, surrounded by good friends, I had a fun college life and graduated without issue. I found a job at a local company, and during my busy days, I met the man who would become my husband. It seemed we both had love at first sight. We started dating immediately, and about a month later decided to get married. My husband was a wonderful person, and I was very proud of him. Our family and friends blessed us, and we had our wedding ceremony without delay, and soon after, I gave birth to our son David. It was my first time parenting, but it wasn't hard because my mother, Morgan, helped. I thought about how smooth and trouble-free my life had been, but maybe I was getting complacent. Gradually, I began to find life boring. That's when people tend to fall into life's pitfalls. It started when my husband's returns home began to get late. Then his business trips unnaturally increased, and he was away from home more and more. I tried to ignore the doubt swelling in my heart, clinging to the sweet illusion that he wouldn't do such things, but the reality was cruel. I found out he was having affairs with several women when one of their husbands came to confront him at our home. At first, my husband didn't admit his guilt, but as evidence piled up, he cried like a child. Eventually, we divorced, and I became a single mother, raising David. At that moment, I felt as if my life had ended. I had lived without hardships, never stumbling, so I had no strength to resist. Because I was complacent, I couldn't even consult with friends. I desperately wanted help, but weird pride got in the way. However, parents are there to help in such times. My mother didn't blame or comfort me. She just said, Ashley, you have me and your friends, but David only has you. Over the phone. With those words, I resolved to raise David properly. To do that, I decided to throw away all my silly pride, rely on others, and raise David with the help of many people. My son never had serious injuries or illnesses, and his grades were excellent. He went on to high school, the local university, and graduated without any issues. He got a job in a local company, moved out, and became independent. When I looked around David's empty room, I couldn't help but cry. There was loneliness, but more than that, a sense of accomplishment. But there was one thing I worried about for David. Like me, he had never faced any major failures. If he encountered a significant setback in life, could he endure it? That was my only concern, but I was prepared to support David when the time came. After David became independent, I terminated the house lease and decided to return to my parents' house. It was too big for one person and felt lonely, and with my father passed away, I was worried about my elderly mother being alone. But returning home, I realized my worries were unnecessary. My mother was as energetic as ever, bustling around. Ashley, if you're bored, get moving, make some money. All right, I got it. In this way, it feels more like I'm the one being taken care of by my mother. Still, she seemed happy I came back, and when there was no work, we'd spend time together reminiscing about the old days. A short while after David became independent, he called me. Mom, it's been a while. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. What's up all of a sudden? Is something wrong? Since David had lived at home and rarely stayed out, having a phone conversation felt somewhat fresh. I was thinking of spending my summer vacation at home. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Though don't expect any special treatment. Despite saying that, I was really happy inside. I wanted to ask about his job and how his social relationships were going. Then I'll call you again when I'm coming back. Sure, I'll be looking forward to it. Be careful on your way here. After hanging up, I immediately started planning in my head. The room over there should be fine, but it needs to be cleaned up, and I need to think about what to cook, too. As I was talking to myself, my mother approached me. David's coming back. We'll need to prepare quite a bit then. My mother seemed motivated, knowing her grandson was coming. Mom, he's my son, so I'll do the preparations. What are you talking about? That boy loves what I make. I absolutely want to make it for him. Once this happens, my mother won't listen to anything else. We prepared the rooms so David could relax comfortably and went shopping for groceries. Having something to look forward to is a good thing. It makes the heart light, and somehow the scenery around seems brighter. And finally, the summer vacation arrived. We went to pick up David from the station and headed home. Seeing David after a long time, he had matured, turning into a full-fledged man. My mother was waiting eagerly at home. We rejoiced at our reunion. The dining table was filled with dishes made by my mother and I. We talked and caught up while eating, and time flew by quickly. When the conversation settled down a bit, David, have you found someone nice? My mother suddenly asked. David blushed and looked down. Maybe he really had found someone. The thought made my heart race uncontrollably. David, don't tell me you really have. Yeah, actually, I've recently started dating someone. My mother and I were overjoyed and cheered loudly. The conversation then centered around his girlfriend. David, though embarrassed, answered our questions properly. It seems she works at the same company and they hit it off right away. Actually, I came back to tell you that. Eventually, I'm thinking of marrying her. Really? Oh, that makes me so happy. What a wonderful summer vacation this turned out to be. Next time I'll bring her over. I want to introduce her, he said shyly, looking somewhat young to me, reminding me he's always my son. After a delightful summer vacation, half a year later in winter it happened. As promised, David brought his girlfriend to our home. The outside was covered in snow, a stark contrast to the summer vacation. My mother and I sat facing David and his girlfriend with serious expressions. All right, this is my girlfriend, Flora. She greeted us. Nice to meet you, I'm Flora. Her first impression was a polite lady. She seemed a bit shy, but her words were careful and her expression was kind. I liked Flora right away. Thank you for choosing David. Well, sure. At first, our conversation was a bit awkward, but after a while the tension eased and we all started to enjoy the conversation. Seeing them sitting together, I thought they really suited each other. And so I teased them. You two really are a good match. Why not get married soon? But this wasn't a joke. I genuinely thought they should marry. They were embarrassed, but they didn't seem to mind. No, Mom, if you say so, maybe we should just go ahead and get the marriage certificate now. Shall we go get it now? We joked like this. Then after a while, the two of them got married. The wedding ceremony was very glamorous, and I felt incredibly happy. But there was a small worry in my heart. For some reason, I kept remembering the time I divorced my husband. Even though I know David's different, and Flora's a wonderful person too, yet I couldn't shake off this unpleasant feeling. Contrary to my worries, their married life was going smoothly. Soon, Flora got pregnant and Frederick was born. Being my first grandchild, he was so adorable. Looking at Frederick, I thought my worries were finally disappearing. But it was around that time, things started to get strange. After giving birth, Flora somehow started to avoid me. I initially thought it was because she was not feeling well after the birth. Yet when I tried to help her out, Ashley, don't touch Frederick, she would scream loudly, and not just that, every time I tried to do something. Don't, I'll take care of it, Ashley, don't interfere. Why are you doing things on your own? Stop it, enough is enough. She would snap at me, leaving me utterly confused. Sure, nobody likes to be meddled with, but her reaction seemed a bit excessive. It felt as if she thought of me as some virus or something, which truly hurt me. So I decided to distance myself from Flora for a while. I thought she might calm down and things would return to normal after some time. Time passed, but Flora never contacted me. Despite having my first grandchild, I couldn't hold him. I wanted to see Frederick's face and have a good talk with David and Flora, but they never came to visit me. My mother seemed somewhat concerned too. I thought about calling them myself, but recalling Flora's yelling made it hard for me to gather the courage. However, I couldn't stand it anymore and decided to visit Flora. Of course, I knew showing up at her house without an appointment was rude, but I wanted to see them so badly. I prepared immediately and headed for Flora's house. I knew it was in a residential area near the station, so I drove there following the map app. It was the middle of summer and the trees in the park were lush. I reminisced about the summer vacation when David came back. I was happy when I heard about Flora, but I never imagined things would turn out like this. Thoughts of my husband flickered through my mind. Get out of my head already. Mumbling to myself, I kept driving. A few minutes later, I arrived at Flora's house. After parking in front, I walked towards her house. I could feel my heartbeat, and that's how nervous I was. I pressed the doorbell of Flora's house. After a while, Flora's voice came through the intercom. "Who is it?" "Oh, Flora, it's me, Ashley. Sorry for showing up unannounced." I tried to speak gently, hoping not to upset Flora. But such consideration was wasted on Flora. As soon as she heard my voice, she became hostile. "What? Why are you here?" "I was worried you might be having a hard time." "Shut up. Who asked you to come? Leave." "But I wanted to see Frederick's face and—" Shut up. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." No matter what I said, Flora wouldn't listen. Fearing she would call the police, I had no choice but to leave. Walking back alone, I headed towards a nearby park. I wanted to see Frederick, even for a moment, so I thought of calling Flora to persuade her. It was a hot time in summer, so the park was deserted. I sat on a bench in the shade and called Flora. "Hello, Flora?" "What is it now? You were creepy." "Please, I just want to talk." "Shut up, there's nothing to talk about." Flora was hysterical as ever. I tried not to be overwhelmed by her voice, attempting to persuade her. "I just want to spend a little time together." "Give me a break, I'm so fed up. Let me tell you, I've hated you, Ashley, from the start." Flora threw such harsh words at me. It was hard to believe she was the same person. "Hate? Did I do something?" "It's your existence. It's just so lowly. That's why you have a divorce history." "That's irrelevant, isn't it?" I was outraged as her words were far too cruel. "Even if you hate me, we're family since you married, aren't we? That's no way to talk." "Family? Don't make me laugh. I didn't want to work, so I just wanted to get married quickly and be supported by a husband. And it just happened to be David." "Oh, stop it. Saying such things." Shut up. Don't you ever call me again. Go spend your remaining years in the countryside." With that, Flora hung up. I couldn't move for a while, shocked by how terrible she was and angry at myself for not seeing through her, but it was too late for regrets. Feeling down, I left the park, got into my car and drove home. I thought about contacting David, but I didn't want to burden him with unnecessary worries since he was busy with work. I asked my mother to listen to my complaints. However, I vented to my mother. "Time will change things. We just have to trust the person David chose," my mother said reassuringly. So I decided to be patient. Time passed and Frederick was about to turn 3. I called David. "David, it's been a while." "Oh, Mom, sorry I hadn't been in touch. I've been really busy." "It's okay, but I want to see Frederick too, and next month is his birthday, right? I'd love to celebrate it at our house." "Frederick would love that. Let me see if I can arrange some time off." David was unaware of what had happened between me and Flora, so he readily agreed to my suggestion. I could hear David and Flora talking in the background over the phone. She seemed reluctant to see me, but after some persuasion from David, it sounded like she agreed. "Flora's okay with it, so we'll come over next month." "Great, I'm so happy. Can we invite the relatives too, make it a big celebration?" "Of course. Sorry to trouble you." "No trouble at all. I'll be looking forward to it." I was thrilled to finally see David and his family, so I immediately shared the news with my mother. "So they're coming back? Then I'll have to cook up a storm," my mother said, eager to get started. I enthusiastically contacted relatives to invite them to Frederick's birthday party. Time flew, and soon it was the day of the party. It was spring, and colorful flowers bloomed around our house. As relatives arrived, David's family did too. Frederick, now 3, walked in on his own. "My, Frederick, nice to meet you. I'm your grandmother." I bent down to get a good look at Frederick's face, but he seemed frightened by the unfamiliar face and hid behind Flora. "Oh dear, I'm sorry. That must have scared you." "Don't worry, he'll get used to it soon." "That's all right, you must be tired. Please rest inside." David and his family headed to the entrance. All the relatives were smiling. Only Flora was glaring at me. It seemed our silent conflict was ongoing, but I tried not to mind, especially since Frederick was so adorable. The living room had a large table set up for the gathering of relatives. I brought out the dishes my mother and I had prepared. "Man, it's been a while since I've had Grandma and your cooking. I'm gonna eat a lot." Frederick looked curiously at the food, but Flora frowned and looked down. As I approached, she whispered so only I could hear, "Just the thought of eating something you made makes me want to vomit." I was a bit angry, but chose to ignore her. I didn't want to be swayed by just Flora's opinion. Flora seemed even more upset than before for ignoring her, and with a louder voice she said, "I just don't feel like eating." Then the relatives looked at Flora with puzzled expressions. "Hey, don't say things like that. Are you tired or something?" David also seemed to feel it was not good, trying to calm Flora down with a joke. Flora turned away with a sullen face. I didn't mind and carried over a large platter with meatloaf on it. Upon seeing this, Flora stood up and began to yell loudly. "What is this? You expect me to eat that?" The relatives looked at Flora in surprise, but she, paying no attention to them, shouted loudly, "I don't want to eat such tasteless, vulgar food. I've had enough." Flora took the platter of meatloaf from my hands and slammed it onto the table with force. The dish shattered, and the scattered food soiled the clothes of the relatives, who angrily blamed Flora. David stood up, trying to calm Flora by placing his hand on her shoulder. However, she still glared at me. "This is peasant food. It's not fit for humans to eat. It's fish feed." "Hey, Flora, calm down." "You be quiet. Why are there so many country bumpkins here anyway? I'm so sick of it. I wish I hadn't come." She grabbed a plate of food left on the table and threw it at me. Her behavior was far from sane. I felt more creeped out than angry at such a sight of Flora. "It seems you're misunderstanding, but I didn't make this." "Huh? Then who made this crap?" "It was me," my mother answered loudly to Flora's question. "Really, what's all the fuss about ruining a perfectly good meal? Are you even a parent, Flora?" My mother's voice was so loud it seemed impossible for someone of advanced age, making the glass doors tremble. However, Flora was unyielding. "I don't care who made it. Don't serve such vulgar food. What kind of harassment is this?" "Listen, this meatloaf is David's favorite. Your behavior is far from rude." "Shut up. The vulgar ones are you guys, ignorant country bumpkins." Frederick finally reached his limit of tolerance and burst into tears. David hurriedly took Frederick to another room, yet Flora didn't care at all. She continued to spout her incomprehensible theories to the relatives. I was truly furious with Flora. Everyone had adjusted their schedules for today, and buying the ingredients cost a significant amount of money. And preparing the meal was also a lot of work. I couldn't forgive Flora for ignoring all these efforts. I slapped Flora hard in earnest. The sound echoed in the room, and Flora, holding her cheek, stared at me in shock. Then my mother shouted, "I will not accept you as my granddaughter-in-law." The relatives around probably felt the same, all staring silently at Flora, but Flora became even more hysterical beyond help. Her eyes bloodshot, spitting saliva. She no longer listened to anyone's voice. Then David ran back, grabbed Flora by the shoulders, and shook her. "Enough! If you hate it here so much, leave right now." David must have been thoroughly fed up with Flora's hysteria. Even Flora, regaining her senses, stormed out of the house, got into her car, and drove away with a burst of speed. Afterward, the chaos ensued. We had to clean up the scattered food on the floor, but the angry relatives were still causing a commotion. The birthday party turned into a chaotic situation. However, it was my mother's words that broke the chaos. "Everyone, be quiet. If you have time to talk, help clean up." Realizing this, everyone quietly began to clean. Luckily, the damage to the food was minimal, and there was still plenty left, including another platter of meatloaf. Frederick had stopped crying, so he rejoined everyone. Before we started the birthday party again, I deeply apologized to the relatives. "I'm truly sorry, everyone. I apologize for the trouble caused, despite you all gathering here." David also apologized deeply next to me. "Please let me apologize as well. I'm sorry for the rude remarks Flora made." However, no one blamed us. Instead, they praised us for speaking up. I'm really grateful to all the relatives. With our apologies, the matter with Flora was put to rest, and we all enjoyed the meal and chatted happily. Frederick ate his meatloaf with relish, making my mother very pleased. The relatives doted on Frederick, calling his name affectionately. Despite the difficulties, the birthday party ended smoothly and everyone dispersed. We saw off each relative one by one, until only 4 of us were left in the house. "There's still cleaning up to do, right? Let me help." "It's okay, you must be worried about Flora. Why don't you head back?" Upon hearing Flora's name, David sighed deeply. "Actually, I've been troubled by Flora's behavior for a while now. I thought she was just tired, being postpartum, but it never improved." David gazed at Frederick playing with Morgan. After pondering for a while, he finally spoke up. "After this incident, I've made a decision. I need to reevaluate my relationship with Flora. I might even consider divorce." I wasn't surprised at all. In fact, it seemed inevitable to me. It can't be helped. I thought I was living a smooth life and then I got divorced. These things happen in life. Thinking back on my past made me a bit sad. I worried that because I had divorced, David might end up doing the same. "Well, that's true, but what worries me is Frederick. The custody will probably go to Flora." "There's no use worrying about that. What will be, will be." David and I looked at each other and smiled. Somehow, an unfounded confidence that everything would work out filled our hearts. Within a month, David and Flora had divorced. I was worried about the custody, but Flora said, "I don't want him. He'll just get in the way of me remarrying," and easily gave up her parental rights. She left David's house and disappeared somewhere, so her whereabouts are unknown. I decided to move in with David to support him as he was busy with work. David might remarry someday, but he thought it was better to focus on work for now. My mother stayed at the family home due to old age. However, we make sure to visit the family home several times a year. She looks forward to these visits and seems to be keeping busy. Frederick was lonely for a while after Flora left, but he quickly got used to me, and now he seems very happy. Despite everything, we're living very happy days now.
Grandma, do you think she'll make it?
Let's pray. Grandma's fighting hard.
Until yesterday, my mother-in-law, Selena, who was lively and well, suddenly collapsed due to a heart attack. It was my niece, Jane, who lives with Selena in our family home, that found her. In front of the ICU, we prayed desperately, but despite our prayers, Selena passed away without returning to us. Selena had 4 children, including my husband, but they arrived at the family home the morning after she passed away. Despite my suspicions about the 4 of them, we somehow managed to get through the funeral. And then, 1 week after the funeral, as life was finally returning to normal, and I had sent my 2 children off to elementary school and preschool, and was watering the flowers in the garden, the mailman came. Among a few postcards, there was one slightly thicker envelope. What could this be? The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, and to my surprise, the sender was Selena. I rushed inside the house, took a deep breath, and opened the envelope, which contained a letter and something else.
Please make sure the children do not notice this letter.
The letter, which started with this line, was sent through her best friend, expressing gratitude towards me, concern for the future of my children, Montague and Diamond, and also for Jane. Apart from the letter, there was another piece of paper with a map drawn on it. I hurriedly contacted Jane and headed to the location indicated on the map. This is. I've always been helped by Selena until the end. Jane, I've made up my mind.
Meadow, I'm supporting you.
I had made a strong resolution. My name is Meadow. I live with my husband Frederick, my first-grade son Montague, and my 3-year-old daughter Diamond. I got married at 32, which wasn't too late, but it took a while before we could have children. I still remember how happy I was to finally be pregnant at 37, to the point of tears. With the pregnancy, I quit the company I had worked for 15 years since graduating from college. Although my colleagues were sorry to see me go, as a team leader, I was working overtime almost every day. And I couldn't imagine continuing to work while raising a child. I wanted to cherish the time with the child who had finally come to us. However, I also felt like quitting work would leave me behind in society, making it hard to make the decision.
Once the kids start preschool and you have some time, you could work a little at our place. If you're family, you don't have to bow and scrape for sudden pickups, and it's more flexible.
It was precisely when Selena, who ran a steakhouse, casually said these words that I was able to make up my mind to quit my job. Selena had lost her husband at a young age and raised 4 children on her own, a true matriarch through and through.
Selena, doesn't this seem like a lot of food? You hit the jackpot. Eat up and work hard in the afternoon.
She never sweated the small stuff. But she was more sensitive to others' feelings than anyone else. I remember how down I felt when I was struggling to get pregnant.
Come on, look up. That's it. Stop by the shop before work starting tomorrow.
Saying this, from the next day, she began giving me lunchboxes every day.
Make sure you eat well. Being in good health is what's important.
She never said it outright, but she took care to help me maintain a body more likely to conceive. My sister-in-law Wendy, sister-in-law Dream, and brother-in-law Melville all married and had children early, and by this time, Selena already had 11 grandchildren. Furthermore, she lived with Wendy, who had moved back home after a divorce, and her 3 children, while the Dream and Melville families lived nearby. Selena, who could see her 11 grandchildren anytime she wanted, must have been more than satisfied with them. Yet, she cried tears of joy for my pregnancy and childbirth. I have always had absolute trust in her, both in the past and now. 7 years have passed since I became a housewife, and with Diamond starting preschool, I decided to start working part-time at Selena's Steakhouse.
Selena, listen to this. Montague broke his umbrella again on his way home.
While doing the dishes, I vented to Selena about my children's misadventures. I was quite upset that he had broken 2 umbrellas in just a few months, but Selena seemed unfazed by the story.
He wasn't being bullied, was he?
No.
He said he was competing with a friend to see who could dig deeper into the ground with their umbrella. It's good to have a competitive spirit. Plus, now he knows umbrellas are not for digging, right?
Laughing along with Selena, I found myself smiling too. The frustration and annoyance from yesterday cleared away. A mother should indeed have this solid and unflappable presence. Being with Selena, I kept finding aspects to admire and emulate. She was my ideal image of a mother.
By the way, Selena, do you have any plans for this Sunday?
Nothing planned. Everyone's so busy these days. Selena looked a bit lonely. The grandchildren she lives with and those in the neighborhood are all in middle school or older now. They're busy with club activities and hanging out with friends, leaving little time for her.
Well, Montague has been saying he wants to go to a sushi restaurant. Why don't we go together? I'd be so happy to see Montague and Diamond. Thank you for always inviting me.
Selena's face softened. She dotes on Montague and Diamond a lot. The kids are very fond of her, too, and ideally, I'd love to take them to visit her at the family home more often. But with my sisters-in-law living there, it's not easy to just drop by. And having her come to our place isn't feasible either, as we don't have parking. So, Frederick and I decided to invite Selena out for meals or outings about once every 2 weeks, so she could spend time with our children. Eager to sit next to their beloved grandma, the kids always scramble for the seat next to Selena. Watching them, Selena would smile warmly.
Is Frederick working today, too?
Yes. He's been really busy since he became a manager.
I see. That's tough.
Previously, Frederick would join us, but lately, his weekend work has increased, so it's been just the 3 of us going out with Selena. I wasn't too bothered by Frederick's absence, reasoning that work couldn't be helped and the kids weren't much trouble anymore. However, I couldn't ignore the somewhat lonely look that appeared on Selena's face.
Next time, I'll make sure to invite us out on a day when Frederick isn't working.
Selena looked surprised, then shook her head and smiled.
Don't worry about that. I'm truly happy just to spend time with you all.
Saying this, she pulled a small box from her bag. Selena smiled brightly and gently opened the box.
This is my treasure box. This ring was given to me by Dad, and this necklace was my first purchase with my first paycheck.
The treasure box filled with memories made me smile, too. What about this one in the bag? I pointed to a small drawstring bag.
That you can open when I say it's okay.
Huh?
Ehe.
Selena laughed mischievously.
I'll give you my treasure box, Meadow. I'm not at the age to dress up anymore.
Saying that, Selena carefully closed the box and placed it in front of me. But such important things.
I want you to have them. To you, my precious daughter.
Selena's words deeply touched me. I'll take good care of it. Mother-in-law. Selena smiled warmly and then gently hugged Montague, who was sitting next to her.
That's not fair, only brother. Grandma, hug me later too. I'll give you a big hug once we're outside.
Selena soothed Diamond, who puffed her cheeks out, with a tender look. Given how much love she showers not just on her grandchildren but also on me, her daughter-in-law, she must really cherish Frederick, her own child. Feeling a bit sad that Frederick seems unaware of the depth of his mother's love, I resolved to make sure Selena could see him the next time. However, that opportunity never came. On a holiday, I went out with the two children.
Grandma will be here soon, right?
We had invited Selena, but she had an appointment at the hair salon in the morning, so we arranged to meet at the lunch spot. Montague and Diamond stretched their necks, waiting eagerly for Grandma's arrival in front of the restaurant. But Selena didn't show up at the agreed time. I tried calling her several times, but she didn't answer. Being a professional, Selena always made it a point to answer the phone within 3 rings. This habit was ingrained in her, and she would instinctively answer within 3 rings even when not at her store. Yet today, she didn't pick up even after 10 rings. Knowing how reliable Selena was, if she was delayed at the hair salon, she would definitely have contacted us. What could have happened? I was getting worried. Even after waiting for 30 minutes, Selena was nowhere to be seen, and she still wasn't answering her phone.
Hey, are we still waiting? I'm hungry. Me too. I want to eat now.
As the children started to get cranky from hunger, I hesitated to enter the restaurant without Selena. Here, you can eat this gummy candy while we wait a bit longer for Grandma, okay? I handed out the gummies to the children and pondered. Could something have happened? Maybe I should go check her house. That's when my phone rang. Jane? The name displayed wasn't Selena's but Jane's, Wendy's youngest daughter. Hello, Jane, perfect timing. Is Grandma there?
Meadow.
What's wrong, Jane? I asked if Selena was at home, but over the phone, Jane sounded like she was crying, and her words were barely coming out.
Grandma's collapsed. Meadow, what do we do?
Jane's voice was tremulous and faint.
Selena has? You can't be serious.
I was at a loss for words. Jane seemed to be panicking, her sobbing audible over the phone. Snapping back to reality, I tried to calm her down.
It's okay. Take a deep breath.
Though I was quite shaken myself, I knew I had to stay calm as the adult, my hands trembling as I spoke.
Where did Grandma collapse?
In the entranceway.
I'm calling an ambulance right now. Stay by her side, we're on our way.
After hanging up, I immediately called for an ambulance to her house.
Is something wrong with Grandma? Glancing over, I saw the children looking at me anxiously. It seems so. Let's go to Grandma's place, okay? I took the children's hands and headed for the parking lot. On the way, I stopped at a convenience store to buy hamburgers so the hungry kids could eat something in the car. Grandma likes plum. Saying so, Montague confidently added a hamburger for Selena to the basket. I'll share this chocolate with Grandma. Diamond innocently tossed the candy into the basket. Selena, wake up! For these kids, you have to pull through. I fervently hoped this. On our way to her house, Jane called to inform us that Selena was being taken to the university hospital. We rushed to the hospital. Arriving there, we found Jane sitting alone, hunched over in front of the ICU. Jane. Meadow. As soon as she lifted her face, tears streamed down Jane's cheeks. You did well on your own. It's okay now. I sat next to Jane and gently rubbed her back. After calming down a bit, Jane shared what happened when she found Selena. Jane, a 9th grader, said she was at club activities that morning. When she returned home before noon and tried to unlock the door, she found it already open. Feeling suspicious, she gently opened the door and discovered Selena collapsed. I'm sorry for calling all of a sudden. I couldn't get through to anyone else. You were the only one I could turn to, Jane said with an apologetic look. No, thank you for calling. We were supposed to have lunch with Grandma. And when she didn't show up past our meeting time and didn't answer her phone, I was really worried. But I never imagined she had collapsed. I regretted not heading to her house as soon as we couldn't get in touch. Then, a hospital staff member approached us. According to the staff, Selena had suffered a myocardial infarction and collapsed. Her condition was critical when she was brought in, and they were doing their best to treat her, but there was no guarantee she would survive. We need to contact everyone. Jane and I tried to call the relatives, but no one answered their phones. Why isn't anyone answering at a time like this? I was frustrated, especially since I couldn't even get through to Frederick. Lately, not only had he been working on weekends, but he also came home late on weekdays. He often came home slightly drunk. He said the drinking was for work or to cheer up his subordinates, but recently, it felt like he was neglecting his family. Selena wanted to see you. I got it. I'll make sure to join next time. Yet, on the morning of his day off, Frederick would say, something came up at work, and leave the house. Work or family, which is more important? This incident occurred amidst my growing frustrations with Frederick. Selena has collapsed and is in critical condition. Please contact us immediately. I sent this message, but there was no response from Frederick or his siblings. Is it normal for everyone to be this hard to reach? When I asked, Jane nodded. In our family, everyone does their own thing. It's always just Grandma and me for dinner. Is that so? I had no idea about this. At least, Selena had never mentioned it. According to Jane, her mother Wendy never took care of the house and would often disappear when the children were young. Selena had reprimanded Wendy many times. You are the mother of these 3 children. But Mom, you're better at housework and raising children than I am. Of course, I am. I raised 4 children. You'll get better if you do it every day. Selena tried to encourage Wendy to be more motherly, but Wendy continued to prioritize herself, coming and going as she pleased. Therefore, Selena, while working, tirelessly looked after Jane and her siblings with a smile. However, having grown up with such a mother, Jane's siblings now, apart from Jane, do not feel grateful towards Selena and leave the household responsibilities to her, living as they please. Now that I think about it, Selena always talked about Jane.
I suddenly remembered.
Jane's hamburgers are the best in the world, or when I started having trouble threading needles because of my farsightedness. Jane bought me a needle threader. Grandma always talked about Jane with a smile.
Hearing my words, tears once again welled up in Jane's eyes. Will Grandma make it?
Let's pray. Grandma's fighting.
But despite our hopes, Selena passed away, leaving us behind. Looking at Selena lying on the bed, she seemed to be just sleeping with her usual gentle expression.
Grandma, we bought you a hamburger. Let's eat chocolate together.
The children, mistaking her for just sleeping, spoke to Selena. Grandma won't wake up anymore. She's gone to heaven.
Where's heaven? Is it a nice place?
It's a very nice place. Grandma must be happy meeting Grandpa there. Indeed, Selena must have finally met her husband whom she longed to see. I hoped they would spend their time together happily. With that thought, I couldn't find myself crying. We received explanations from the hospital about what would happen next and headed to the family home to prepare for the funeral. Even though it was already evening, nobody was at the family home. The kitchen was set up for dinner. It must be cream stew for tonight. The amount prepared was for a family of 5. Despite not knowing when everyone would return or if they would eat, Selena always prepared meals for the whole family. Till the end, I was deeply moved by Selena's kindness and greatness. Colleagues from Selena's steakhouse also came to the family home to help. We want to help in any way we can for Selena, they said, helping with the funeral preparations. While sharing memories of Selena, we brainstormed and proceeded with the preparations. Jane was the only one familiar with the house. But there were things even she, still a high school student, didn't know, making the preparations challenging. Wendy, whom we thought would return eventually, never came back, and there was no contact with any of the siblings-in-law. Although there was much to consider, my thoughts were only on Selena, and I took the initiative to act. Frederick and his siblings arrived at the family home the next morning.
What have you been doing all this time?
I gave Frederick a cold look. There was trouble at work. I was utterly dismayed that Frederick, even after his own mother passed away, still used work as an excuse. And it wasn't just him. From Wendy and the other siblings-in-law, there was no word of thanks for anything said about Selena or for the funeral preparations. Then, see you at the funeral. Call us anytime if you need anything. Sensing the odd atmosphere, the colleagues quietly left. During the funeral, Jane and I, despite our grief, fulfilled our duties as family members. But Selena's own children seemed indifferent and did not make any effort to participate. Thinking about these 4 disturbed my peace of mind. I focused on my last moments with Selena. A week after the funeral ended. As life slowly returned to normal and I had sent the 2 kids off to elementary school and preschool, I was watering the garden when the mailman arrived. Among a few postcards, there was one slightly thicker envelope. What could this be? The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, and surprisingly, the sender was Selena. I quickly went inside the house, took a deep breath, and opened the envelope, which contained a letter and something else.
Please make sure the children do not notice this letter.
The letter, starting with this line, was sent through her best friend, expressing gratitude towards me and concern for the future of Montague, Diamond, and Jane. Apart from the letter, there was another piece of paper with a map drawn on it. I hurriedly contacted Jane and headed to the location indicated on the map. This is. I've been helped by Selena until the end. Jane, I've made up my mind.
Meadow, I'm supporting you.
I had made a strong resolution. A month later, we were called by a lawyer to the family home. Besides us, the Wendy family, Dream family, and Melville family were also gathered. It turned out that Selena had prepared a will during her lifetime and left it with the lawyer. In the will given by the lawyer, Wendy, Frederick, Dream, Melville, divide everything equally among the four of you. It was written. I thought I had no part in this, so I should go upstairs and take care of the children. Just as I was about to stand up, an unbelievable phrase caught my ear.
She was a noisy old woman, but at least it was good she left us an inheritance.
The voice belonged to Frederick.
Really, it was worth putting up with everything.
The four of them mocked Selena's memory. At that moment, my anger exploded.
I no longer want anything to do with any of you. And that includes you.
With that, I slammed a completed divorce application form on the table. The room fell silent.
What's this all of a sudden? You've been living because of what I do, you know.
Frederick glared at me sharply, but I glared back without backing down.
The late nights and weekends weren't for work, but for your affairs, right? I have the evidence.
I then spread out a private investigator's report on the table. In fact, the letter from Selena included a key to a coin locker located at the place marked on the map. When Jane and I opened the locker, we found a report on Frederick's affair. Selena must have felt something was off with Frederick's recent work on weekends. This must be a mother's intuition. Selena had secretly hired a detective agency to gather evidence of Frederick's infidelity. I was completely unaware of the affair, so I was truly amazed by Selena's actions.
I don't want a share of the inheritance or compensation from the divorce trial. Just sign the divorce papers now. And never involve yourself with me or the children again.
I couldn't bear to be with someone who disregards their family any longer. I spoke with increased fervor. Frederick's expression twisted for a moment, but then he smirked.
Fine by me. I'll get to use Mom's inheritance all by myself. Works out better for me.
He then filled out the divorce application without hesitation. Since the lawyer is here, it's better to get that promise in writing. Jane's voice came from the side.
Right. Saying you don't want compensation from the divorce trial, then coming back crying later is exactly what I'd expect. That's my girl.
Wendy praised Jane. Jane was actually advising me out of concern. Thinking this, I didn't retort but decided to have the lawyer draft a document outlining the divorce terms as Jane suggested. The discussion about the divorce was over, and I left the family home with the children. As I was leaving, I asked,
The things I received from my mother-in-law during her lifetime aren't considered part of the inheritance, right? May I keep them as keepsakes?
Those are just trinkets in a jewelry box, right? Please, feel free to take them. The four siblings, including Wendy, mocked Selena and seemed preoccupied with the inheritance, quickly wanting to dismiss me and the children, outsiders to them. After that, we headed straight to my parents' home.
Welcome back. We've put your things in your room.
I had informed my parents about Frederick's affair and my decision to divorce him as soon as I found out. Considering the children, I thought about moving within their current school district despite being jobless. But my family lived in a different state. Children adapt quickly, you know. Encouraged by my father's words, I decided to temporarily return to my parents' home. It was immediately clear that this was the right decision. Visits to my parents' home were rare, maybe once a year. Though initially tense about living with my parents, the children quickly grew fond of them.
Grandpa, let's play catch.
Montague, unlike with Frederick, who rarely spent time with him, started playing catch with my dad, who showed him affection.
Grandma, what's this flower?
Diamond, who had been missing Selena, began to enjoy the garden flowers with my mom, knowledgeable about plants. They gradually adjusted to their new schools, and we started a modest yet peaceful life. About 3 months later, I received a call from Frederick.
Did you deceive us?
He seemed to be talking about the jewelry box I had received from Selena before she passed.
I heard from Wendy. There were expensive jewels inside that box.
In fact, besides the evidence of the affair, there was another letter in the coin locker. That letter mentioned the jewelry box Selena gave me before her passing. Selena said, "It's okay." When I was told I could open the drawstring bag I had been given permission to open. It contained a gemstone called alexandrite, and the value of the gemstone was about $500,000. This gem allowed me to decisively move forward with the divorce from Selena. Apparently, Wendy had eavesdropped on a conversation between me and Jane, discovering the existence of the gem.
That's why I asked clearly, didn't I? If it was okay to keep what mother-in-law gave me before she passed. That's sneaky.
Even over the phone, I could tell Frederick was furious. It wasn't surprising, considering they were now burdened with dividing not just the inheritance but also the debt among themselves. I had been completely unaware of the debt. Later, Jane told me over the phone that Selena had taken a $500,000 loan 5 years ago for renovations to her shop. If she hadn't purchased the jewel for me, she wouldn't have needed to take on such a massive debt. But this was a testament to Selena's kindness.
Grandma always appreciated how kind you were to her, Meadow.
Since her own sons and daughter were so distant, she was even happier that you became part of the family. Selena had wanted to express her gratitude to me, and she intended to work off the $500,000 debt herself. If Frederick and his siblings had been kinder to Selena, perhaps she wouldn't have felt the need to leave them with such a burden. They had truly brought this upon themselves. I hoped they would reflect deeply on their actions. After the divorce, Frederick and his siblings tried to contact me several times. But thanks to the agreement we made during the divorce, I managed to fend them off. Not only Frederick but other brothers contacted me. "Next time you contact me, I will consult the police." After I told them that, all contact from them suddenly stopped. According to Jane, the siblings finally realized they needed to sort out their issues on their own. Now, they're embroiled in a dispute over whether to sell the family home. Wendy wants to continue living there rent-free, while Frederick and the others want to sell it to alleviate some of the debt. The four of them seemed to get along well when they were making fun of Frederick. But in the end, all four of them can only think about themselves. Despite everything, I felt truly relieved to have distanced myself from such people. The only person I've kept in touch with is Jane. She moved for university and, coincidentally, started living alone near my parents' home.
Montague, I'll help you with your homework.
Yay!
I love Sister Jane because she's so kind.
Jane, with her kind heart, is now studying to become a nurse, aiming to help people just like her grandmother did. Although she can't rely on her mother Wendy, Jane has been working hard, earning a scholarship for tuition exemption and covering her living expenses with part-time jobs and scholarships. When Jane decided on her university, I offered to sell the gem to help with her expenses, but she refused.
I want to show Grandma that I can live my life well, with a respectable job on my own strength.
Hearing Jane's determination, I decided to quietly support her in her journey. Jane, with her kindness and strong will. She is sure to become a wonderful woman like Selena. When that time comes, I plan to give her a portion of the money from selling the gemstone. After all, Jane was the only grandchild who stayed by Selena's side throughout. And now, I'm also looking for work, trying not to be outdone by Jane. I'm considering starting my own business, something that can be balanced with parenting, and my plans are gradually taking shape. This is all thanks to the jewelry box that Selena left behind. I intend to use some of the initial funds for startup costs, but ultimately want to support my children with the money I earn myself. I want to go to Finland to see the aurora. Montague's eyes sparkle as he solves his homework with a world map drawn on it. Recently, he's been very fond of the globe he received as a gift, eagerly sharing his knowledge about the countries of the world.
I want to meet Santa Claus. I'd prefer somewhere warm, like Hawaii.
Everyone dreams of their own desired destinations. That's it. I'll use the money Selena left behind to take the children and Jane to the places they want to visit. Surely, it will be an enriching experience that broadens their horizons. Just imagining it fills me with excitement. Selena, thanks to you, we can spend our days with smiles on our faces. Please continue to watch over us.
After Mom gets discharged, I'm counting on you to take care of her. What? You're going to be the one taking care of her. It's obvious. We're family. He threatened me with divorce papers when I refused to take care for my mother-in-law. Do you want to be a poor single mom? If you don't, then just do as you're told. I can't take it anymore. I'm so done with this life. Just watch it. I'll make you regret this for sure. My name is Catherine. I'm 43. I live with my husband Bob and our high school-aged daughter Emma. We get by on Bob's salary and the part-time work I do to support our family. We're not rich by any means, but we have a reasonably good life. Then one day, the worst thing happened. Catherine, it looks like Mom has collapsed and has been taken to the hospital. Your mom? My mother-in-law lives alone at home, but she's spry for her age. Apparently, she hurt her back in an accident while she was out shopping and now has to stay in the hospital for a while. Anyway, it's good that her life's not in danger. I'll go check on her at the hospital tomorrow. All right, take care. Aren't you coming? Why would I? Right, okay, I'll go alone. Please send my regards to your mom. Why I don't visit my mother-in-law in the hospital? That's because I've cut ties with her. I've been married to Bob for 20 years. Since the beginning, my mother-in-law has detested me and has gone out of her way to make life difficult. You're really inefficient, aren't you, Catherine? You're not suitable for my son. I wish he had a better wife. I never imagined you'd be this useless. Enduring the continuous verbal abuse from my mother-in-law bore down my spirit. Whatever I did, it was always, daughter-in-law is useless, not good enough, poor Bob, and so on. I was met with complaints every time we met. But I held on as long as I could because she was Bob's mother, whom I love. However, even after my daughter Emma was born, the mother-in-law harsh words did not stop. On the contrary, she started finding fault with Emma as well. Just great. The long-awaited grandchild is a girl. She can't carry on the family name. She's of no use. If it's a girl, she should just at least be pretty. Who on earth does she take after? Amidst the difficult days, the worst situation that finally decided the end of our relationship occurred. One day, when my mother-in-law was unusually relaxed at our house, my daughter ran up to her with a picture book. Granny, can you read this? The moment Emma handed over the book, mother-in-law knocked it down and hurled at Emma. Don't touch me with your dirty hands. I don't need an unattractive grandchild like you. Emma was startled by her grandmother's loud voice and began to cry. "Granny's scary. I'm scared." She must have been very sad. She was sobbing, and it hurt me to see her like that. Even yelling at my young daughter, I had reached my limit. "Hey, mother-in-law, what do you think you're doing?" I rushed over, but my mother-in-law showed no signs of remorse. Rather, she snapped, "It's your daughter's fault." "You've got to be kidding. I saw what you did. You knocked Emma's book out of her hand, didn't you?" "She tried to touch me with her dirty hands. Is there a problem?" "Dirty hands? How can you say that? If you're going to do this to my daughter, don't come to our house anymore." "Huh? Don't get cheeky with me. I don't care about you all. I just came to see Bob." "This is also the house of me and Emma. Stop making silly excuses." In this way, my mother-in-law got into a big argument. Bob just stood there flustered, saying, "Hey, both of you, please stop," and didn't even warn his mother. Mother-in-law eventually went home grumbling all the while, but this proved to be the final straw. "I can't deal with your mother anymore. I'm fed up with you not defending me and Emma. Let's get divorced." When I said that, Bob started flustered again. "Hey, wait a minute. Even I find my mom tough to deal with. I just couldn't say anything because it was all so sudden today. I'm on your side, Catherine and Emma." People can say anything they want, but unless you act on it, it means nothing anyway, and I can't take it anymore. Then my husband made a proposal. Okay, if you insist, Catherine. I don't mind if you cut ties with my mom, but please, I beg you, don't divorce me." I was torn. Would there be any benefit staying with such an unreliable husband in the future? Even if we cut ties, could I really avoid any interaction with my husband's mother forever? In the end, the reason I didn't go through with the divorce was because of our daughter. Our daughter adores her father, and he's a good and caring dad when he's with her. For our young daughter's sake, taking away her father right now wouldn't be right. So I decided to put the divorce on hold on the condition that I'd sever ties with my mother-in-law. But if anything else happens, I won't be lenient. "I get it. I'll talk to my mom too." And with that, we reached an agreement, and I severed ties with my mother-in-law. I'll never let my daughter meet her grandmother again. That was a condition of our reconciliation. After 10 years, I can't forget what my mother-in-law did. As for visiting her, that's out of the question. Frankly, what happens to my mother-in-law isn't my business. A few days later, my husband came to me with a serious look on his face. "Catherine, I need to talk." "What is it?" My husband looked awkward in response to my question. "It's about my mom. Apparently, she'll need care after she's discharged." "So what?" "It'll cost a lot if she goes to a facility, right? So I was thinking we should take care of her at home." "Oh, that's impressive. Good luck." "No, not me. You." "What? What is he talking about?" "What? You're not seriously. You know that my mother's in a bad way, right, Catherine?" "So what? You know I've cut off all ties with your mother, right?" He fell silent. The fact that he even suggests this was beyond my comprehension. To avoid any unwarranted expectations, I laid it out for him clearly. "Look, I have a job too, you know, and there's no way I can take on the responsibility of caring for your mother." "But you're just working part-time, right? Surely you can find some time to take care of my mother." "If that's what you think, then I'll just talk to my boss about switching to full-time. How about that?" There was no point in dragging out the conversation. My feelings weren't going to change, and his timid demeanor was only annoying me. Although he looked like he wanted to say something, I naturally ignored him. The next day, it seemed he'd spoken to his mother in the hospital as she called me.
"Excuse me, Catherine? What on earth are you thinking, refusing to care for your own mother-in-law?"
Yes, I refused. Is there a problem? Her bizarre shriek came through the phone when faced with my calm response.
"A problem? Don't be ridiculous. How dare you refuse to care for me in my time of need?"
Of course, I've cut you off, remember? You're not even my mother-in-law to me anymore. I have no desire to help you with your care.
"What did you just say? How dare you, you impertinent child! Absolutely will not tolerate this refusal."
To be honest, I considered just hanging up on her. It was a hassle. But if I didn't firmly reject her now, she'd probably just keep calling. I was prepared to settle this today, so I faced off with my mother-in-law. Do you remember why I cut you off in the first place, mother-in-law?
"What do you mean? Are you implying I've done something wrong?"
Have you already forgotten? Because of your insidious bullying and your appalling attitude towards my daughter, my husband also agreed to this decision. Goodbye.
"Wait, hold on."
With no further discussion, I ended the call and promptly blocked her number. A few days later, Bob tried to bring up the topic again. "Hey, about my mom." "Again?" I couldn't hide my irritation as I responded. Just so we're clear, I have absolutely no sympathy for my mother-in-law, no matter what happens to her. I've told you again and again that I won't provide care, right? Unexpectedly, her normally compliant husband shot back without hesitation. "No, you're going to take care of my mom. Count on it." What? What does he mean? I've repeatedly stated that I don't want to have anything to do with my estranged mother-in-law. Is he like a chicken, forgetting everything after taking 3 steps? Count on it is not the response, right? I said I won't provide care, remember? I fired back defiantly, but my husband is different today. No matter how much I argue, he persistently pushes back. The heated argument I had with my mother-in-law on the phone days ago came to mind. Probably my mother-in-law had given him a piece of her mind afterward. "Anyway, you're going to take care of my mom. It's obvious, isn't it?" "What? Former family, right? Remember, it was your idea to cut ties with your mother." "That was then. My mom is now weak, and it's a different situation. She's not as energetic as she was after hospitalization, yet you're still talking like a child." Childish? Me? The reason we're in this situation is because of that damn mother-in-law's childish harassment. And according to the conversation on the phone, your mother-in-law seemed pretty lively, didn't she? And even my husband repeatedly demands I take care of his mother. I'm not going to back down. No matter what you say, I can't do what I can't do. And if it's that important to you, you can do it yourself. At that, her husband silently handed her a sheet of paper. "What's this?" "Can't you tell? It's a divorce paper." To her shock, her husband had presented her with a completed divorce form. "If you don't want to get divorced, take care of my mom." My silent disbelief only prompted my husband to pressure me more. "You'd be in trouble if we divorced now, right? Emma will be a college student next year. You, just a part-timer, can't possibly survive if you divorce me now, right? If you don't like it, Just do as you're told. The man who didn't consider my feelings using our daughter as leverage to threaten me? I just can't continue being married to someone like this. It's impossible. The moment I was convinced of this, I felt my feelings for my husband quickly disappear. I'm going to end this. That's what I thought. Hey, are you even listening? You were all fired up just a moment ago. Now that divorce is a reality, are you scared? My husband looks down at me laughing. My daughter came into the room, probably hearing us arguing. Hey, I heard raised voices. What's going on? Then my husband started a tirade on Emma too. Oh, you're just in time. You'll be helping with your grandmother's care too. What? Why me? It's obvious, isn't it? She's your beloved grandma. You could at least help with the caregiving. I can't believe that they would impose my mother-in-law's care on my daughter without a second thought. I was so pissed off that I signed the divorce papers as fast as I could. What are you doing, Catherine? Isn't it obvious? I'm signing the divorce papers. I'll go submit them once I'm done. Perhaps he hadn't expected me to agree to the divorce so easily. Bob started to panic. Hey, enough already. Did you even listen to me? You're going to be the one who's going to have a hard time if we get divorced. I don't care. Compared to staying involved with you, any hardship seems bearable. With divorce papers in hand, I began to prepare to leave. Then, perhaps numb to the situation, my husband takes the final step. Are you sure about this? If we divorce, you'll have to give up Emma. I'm warning you, I'll get custody. You'll never see our daughter again. A husband who has no doubt in his mind that he's superior to his wife. Truly, how stupid can he be? Even if we get divorced, I will not give up my daughter. I will do whatever it takes to provide for my daughter at all cost. I will get custody of Emma. Shut up. Considering our financial situations, it's natural that I get her. You won't see our daughter again. Tough luck. At that moment, Emma, who had been quietly listening, chimed in. What are you talking about? I'm going with Mom. Huh? At Emma's words, Bob stood there dumbstruck. What are you saying? If you follow your mother, Catherine, you'll only face hardship. I don't care. It's better than being with you, Dad. I would never want to take care of Grandma. That's right. My daughter had not forgotten what my mother-in-law had done to her in the past. I really hate Grandma for bullying Mom. I'm also disgusted with you, Dad, for not helping my mom. I don't care about the money. I'm going to live with Mom. At my daughter's words, a surge of indescribable emotion wells up within me. I had hoped she would choose to come with me, but I never imagined that she thought it through so much. My husband, looking quite pathetic, started trying to persuade us to stay. Wait, just a second, wait. If you two are gone, who's gonna take care of the house? Why don't you do it yourself, Dad? My daughter responded with a smirk. You can take care of Grandma, do all the housework, all by yourself. That's impossible. I have a job, you know. So what? Mom has been working, doing house chores, and you want her to take care of Grandma on top of that? Expecting others to do what you won't do yourself? That's ridiculous. So out of touch. My daughter gave my husband a thorough tongue lashing, leaving him completely stunned. Eventually, he resorted to his usual tactic of crying to win us over. Oh, why are you guys blaming me so much? I just asked for a little help with the caregiving. There was a time when we might have let it slide, but neither my daughter nor I have that kind of patience anymore. Looking at my crying husband, all we could do was shake our heads in disbelief. "Let's go, Mom. Let's hurry up and pack our things." Right. My daughter and I each packed our belongings, took the divorce papers, and left the house. My husband kept crying, trying to stop us until the last moment, but of course, we ignored him completely. We submitted the divorce papers at the city hall, and our divorce was finalized. My daughter and I decided to live at my parents' house for a while. By the way, my family runs a flower shop. Right now, I am working part-time and helping out with the family's flower shop, trying to save money for my daughter's college tuition. My husband continued to contact me persistently, even after that. "Mom is throwing stuff at me. Help me. I can't handle it anymore on my own. Please come back." Since he was so annoying, I blocked his contact. Living with my ill-tempered mother-in-law every day must be quite a struggle, and it seems that my husband is having to care for her day and night without any sleep. Finally, my company has moved to shorter working hours and my paycheck seems to be barely scraping by. If I had known it would come to this, I should have done whatever it took to put my mother-in-law into a facility. Well, it's too late to talk about what I should have done now. Besides, thanks to my husband making a fuss about caregiving, I'm able to spend these days with my daughter. I guess I should thank him for that bit. From now on, I want to live each day in cooperation with my cherished family.
Are you all familiar with a disease called facial arteriovenous malformation? I was born with this condition, causing a large bump to form at the center of my face. This is a congenital disease, where arteries and veins, which normally have different roles, somehow become connected, allowing blood to flow between them and resulting in a large blood clot in that area. From a young age, I underwent numerous surgeries, each one causing further distortion of my face. And during my school years, particularly in elementary school, I was terribly teased by the boys in my class. This facial disorder, impossible to hide no matter how hard I tried, led to severe self-consciousness. I honestly thought I would end my life without ever experiencing love or marriage, believing there would be no one who could love someone with such an ugly appearance. I seriously thought so, at least until I met him. I, Sophia, was a hopelessly negative person, lacking self-confidence and recognized by others as such. Although I was somewhat influenced by what people said about my disease, the existence of my family, especially my sister, was what really exasperated my complex. You see, my sister Mia has beautiful double-fold eyelids, long lashes, a perfectly shaped nose. She's as pretty as a doll and is often complimented. My parents were extremely proud of her and frequently gifted her new clothes, shoes, and hair accessories. In contrast, my ugliness, a product of my disease, was treated as if I didn't exist. They'd say, "It'd be pitiful for Mia to be seen as siblings with such an ugly sister." For this reason, my parents did not want me to spend much time with my sister. However, Mia didn't care about my disease at all. She treated me normally, even giving me the toys and hair accessories she'd received, and defending me against those who made comments about my face. She was always there for me. While I love and cherish her for being such a saving grace in my life, my parents' love was always directed at her. They showed no interest in time. And for instance, even if Mia got grades in the 70s, they would compliment her. "Getting this high is incredible! Our Mia is not only pretty, but also good at studying. We're truly proud of her." But no matter how well I did on a test, they would always dismiss it with, "You know, being good at studying isn't enough to get you through life. In this world, even if you're not very smart, you can get by if you're attractive and pleasant. Since you're not good looking, I think you're going to have a hard life." When I found a pretty dress I liked, they'd say, "It might look good on Mia, but it wouldn't suit your face. You'll just become a laughing stock, so you better not wear it. When I showed interest in makeup and bought a magazine with my own allowance, they'd tell me, makeup can't cover up to your level. It's a waste of time. They kept comparing me to Mia, and every single thing I did was denied, and I lost confidence more and more. Mia often protested against my parents' attitude towards me, but that just made things worse. That's when I realized there really is no place for me in this family. And it's not like I had a place at school either. I was teased by the boys in my class with nicknames like Monster or Face Weapon. And there were times when I was avoided because people said they might catch my disease if they touched me. Even in middle school, although the treatment wasn't as harsh, there were still boys who would grimace just by me being next to them. And while no one would say anything to me directly, I would often hear whispers about me. But what hurt the most was being made the subject of a punishment game. There used to be a game where the person who lost had to confess their feelings to someone in the class, and I was often the target of that punishment game. Of course, I knew they were only confessing because they had lost a game, so I politely declined. But then they'd go around saying, "I got rejected by that monster girl!" And I was yelled at by one of the boys I had turned down, saying, "Don't get all high and mighty just because it's a punishment game, ugly." At the time, it seemed so selfish and unfair to me, but I was convinced that my face was a sin. I thought I was causing discomfort to others just by being there. I was filled with guilt. During my years in elementary and middle school, I had no good memories of boys at all. But there was once, just once, when I fell in love with a boy in my class. This happened in my sophomore year of high school. A boy from my class, whom I happened to be seated with after the classes were shuffled, would treat me like any other person, without making fun of or avoiding my face. He would greet me with a good morning every day as our seats were adjacent. I knew full well that he didn't have any feelings for me, but his single greeting brought me so much joy in the face of constant ridicule and avoidance that I naturally began to like him. However, I didn't really want to date him or anything like that. I just wanted this pleasant time to last as long as it could. But day by day, I felt more and more that I liked the boy, and after worrying about what to do, I asked my sister for advice, and she said, "I think it's a good idea to just tell him how you feel." After much deliberation, I decided to tell him how I felt. So I left a letter expressing my feelings in his desk. A few days later, I noticed something strange about the atmosphere in the class when I arrived at school. It was as if everyone was murmuring and glancing in my direction. As I was wondering what was going on, the boy, who had arrived at school before me, approached me and asked, "Hey, did you put this letter in my desk?" I responded by silently nodding, my gaze fixed to the ground. In that moment, I heard a sound above my head as if something was tearing, and the next moment, pieces of my torn letter were falling into my sight. It's troublesome when something like this happens. What are you going to do if strange rumors start spreading? You fell in love just because I greeted you out of politeness? How inexperienced in love are you? I didn't mean anything by it. If I gave you the wrong impression, I'm sorry. He said this, and for some reason, the class erupted in applause and cheers. And I heard comments like, "Wow, you've got guts," and "That's a bit sad, isn't it?" After that, my memory is a blur, and the next thing I knew, I was at home. But I don't remember anything about the journey. All I can remember is the feeling of guilt and despair. After that incident, I couldn't bring myself to go to school anymore, and I stopped attending. When my parents heard about what happened, instead of being on my side, they said, "His reaction was justified. You caused trouble, so you should apologize." Eventually, they began to scold me for not going to school for such a trivial reason, and tried to force me to go, but I just couldn't get myself to move. In the end, I dropped out of high school and became a recluse. After I became a shut-in, my older sister was worried and repeatedly tried to communicate with me. In contrast, our parents would either verbally abuse me in front of my room every morning or forcefully enter my room to berate me directly. They'd hurl insults such as, "We never should have had you," or "You're such a disgrace," causing me to despair every day, wondering why I even existed. Apparently, my sister noticed my situation and consulted our grandparents on our mother's side. The following day, they came to hear my story, and after learning about the events at school and our parents' subsequent reactions, they were furious. They scolded our parents, saying, "We will take care of her," and came to my rescue. My grandparents did not abandon me, even though I was in a state of despair. They faced me directly, and with their support, along with my sisters, I gradually started to recover. Although it was only my desire to end my life that had quieted down. I was unable to erase my fear and mistrust towards the opposite sex, no matter how hard I tried. However, my grandfather would always encourage me, saying, "There will be a time when you can be happy in any way without having to get married. We just want you to be happy in any way you want to live. So forget about the guy who said terrible things to you. It's a waste of time to keep remembering such a person. We may not have much time left, but you still have many futures ahead of you." My grandmother also always reassured me, saying that as long as I was happy, that was all that mattered. She would often compliment me, saying things like, "Your skin is so glowing, it makes me jealous," or "Your eyes are as beautiful as jewels." My sister would also visit our grandparents' house and spend time chatting with me. We'd read magazines together, discuss cute cosmetics, and generally enjoy our time. After living like this for about 3 years, I began to feel motivated to do something. I decided to start studying again to get my high school equivalency diploma, which I eventually acquired. Afterwards, I started looking for work I could do from home, and slowly started to earn income. The income was less than what others made working outside, but considering the days when I had shut myself in and was in a state of despair, I felt that I had grown quite a bit. However, I was still scared of comments about my appearance, so I couldn't go outside. This was how I was living at my grandparents' house, when my parents suddenly showed up one day. They hadn't even bothered to make a single phone call since I moved to my grandparents' house, but they stormed in, saying they had something to discuss with me. They announced, "There's a marriage proposal for you. The prospective groom is the son of a medical foundation representative. Apparently, he also has some issues, and has a hard time finding a spouse. So the focus has now turned to you. But isn't this great? He's rich, and he's willing to take someone like you, who's been a burden on society." I was taken aback by this sudden turn of events, but my grandparents stepped in to help. They argued that it was unreasonable to make decisions without considering my feelings. My father, who seemed to speak convincingly, responded, "This might be the last chance for her. She's had so many painful experiences because of her appearance. Why not consider this as a chance for happiness?" The face of the man in the marriage document was mostly hidden by his bangs and wasn't clear, but I could make out his plump physique and the contours of his face. I understood instantly that he was probably also being forced into marriage to get rid of some problem. Or maybe he was an extreme eccentric who liked unusual things. But even if I rejected the proposal here, it seemed like the negotiations with the other family were already in progress. They seemed like a wealthy family, and my parents would undoubtedly try to force me into the marriage. If I ran away from this, it could potentially have negative repercussions on my grandparents. For the sake of my grandparents who had protected me from that day until now, I made up my mind. I understand. I will accept this proposal. Upon hearing these words, my grandparents' eyes widened. They embraced me and tried to persuade me numerous times. "You don't have to go along with such a ridiculous proposition." However, I told them through tears, "Grandma, Grandpa, until that day, I had lost all hope in life. But because you were by my side, I was able to enjoy living until now. I can't thank you enough, but I don't want to cause any more trouble, so I've decided to accept this marriage proposal. Maybe, like Dad said, this is my last chance." My grandparents cried soundlessly and hugged me tightly. And then a few days later, I had to meet with the man from the proposal and his parents. I hadn't expected that this meeting would change my fate at all. The prospective groom, a man named Matthew, was hunched over and always looking down. His face was mostly hidden by his hair, and his skin seemed to be rough in places. His voice was so quiet that I sometimes couldn't understand what he was saying. Matthew barely glanced at my face throughout our meeting and only answered questions in short, clipped sentences. I wondered, is this man going to be my husband? He can't even hold a basic conversation. However, I was in no position to complain. Both sets of parents seemed not only enthusiastic about the marriage, but acted as if it was already decided. I felt comfortable, but I didn't feel like I could say no. Eventually, the marriage arrangement was agreed upon. Sure enough, as the son of a wealthy family, a luxurious high-rise apartment was provided as our new home, furnished with high-end branded appliances and furniture. However, our conversations didn't flow well. It was almost like he couldn't see me. He was so silent. However, being constantly silent was also stressful, so I tried to find a conversation topic. Why did you accept this marriage proposal, Matthew? Upon asking this, he surprisingly began to take off his long-sleeved shirt. Confused by his sudden action and in a state of panic, I saw that his skin was red and appeared inflamed. He explained, "I suffer from a skin disease called psoriasis. It doesn't transfer from touch, so please don't worry. But because of its appearance, I've reached this point without any romantic experiences. There were even rumors that I had an STD, which is impossible. Moreover, my appearance is so unattractive that even my parents don't want to involve themselves with me. They probably brought up this marriage to get rid of me. I'm sorry for involving you in my circumstances." After explaining, he redressed and bowed deeply to me. I saw a glimpse of inflammation at his hairline, and I understood that he was growing his bangs long to hide it. "I see. Please, raise your head. I'm in a similar situation too." When Matthew raised his face, I told him everything about my past. When he heard my story about high school, he started crying. "I can't believe something like that happened to you. It must have been so hard at the time. It's unacceptable that a guy would do that to you. Treating you like an exhibit. That's outrageous." He became angry to a stranger on my behalf and offered me words of comfort. Despite having experienced his share of hardships, he cried and became angry upon hearing my story. I wondered, how kind-hearted is this man? Seeing this, I commented, "We seem quite similar, don't we?" Matthew replied, blushing with a shy smile. I was thinking the same thing. After that, we spent the entire night sharing our life stories, crying, getting angry, and sympathizing with each other. From then on, we slowly started to understand each other. I tried to understand his disease and collected a variety of information, trying everything from dietary therapy to supplements. But, I noticed that he was surprisingly picky about food, especially vegetables. So I tried different seasonings and cooking methods and made various arrangements so that he could eat more easily. Then perhaps, finding the taste to his liking, he began to enjoy his meals, saying they were delicious. He began to improve his constitution, little by taking in nutrients through meals and taking medication. Also, to reduce stress, we started doing things like yoga and having lots of conversations, and I saw Matthew's smile slowly increase. Matthew never made a nasty comment about my face, but rather, he repeatedly praised me, saying, "Cute," while blushing. Just once when I asked him, "Don't you dislike my face?" he told me, "Not at all. It's part of your character, and I think it's cute. And you've managed to stand up on your own despite going through tough times. I don't think there's another woman who's as strong and wonderful as you." His words gave me a profound sense of comfort. Over the following few years, we carried out a plan to improve Matthew's physical condition. As a result, his skin inflammation calmed down a bit, and the inflammation at his hairline became less noticeable. Moreover, thanks to his disciplined lifestyle, he lost weight and turned into a slim and smart-looking Matthew. I couldn't help but fall in love with him all over again. When he tidied up his obstructive bangs, it suited him very well. Matthew, who had been shy about his skin condition until now, said, "I can't show Sophia an unsightly figure." He became more confident, and the impression of the people at his office slowly changed for the better. Apparently, he hadn't told anyone about his disease, assuming they wouldn't understand. When he finally opened up about it, he was surprised that everyone accepted him. They even told him, "Why didn't you tell us? Trust us more." One day, while we were spending such days, Matthew suddenly said, "Hey, do you want to have a wedding ceremony?" Even though I had become a bit more positive since marrying him, I was still afraid of appearing in front of a large crowd. When I hesitated, he said, "If you really hate the idea, of course we don't have to. But I thought it would be a good way to express our gratitude to the people at my company who helped me. But the fact that I can even think like this is all thanks to you, Sophia." The old me would have thought that a wedding ceremony was impossible because I didn't want my dirty skin to be seen. But thanks to your cooperation, my symptoms have calmed down. So I think I can face forward more than before. His gentle words moved me, and after a lot of soul searching, I decided that I wanted to take a step forward and agreed to have a wedding ceremony. But I don't have any friends, so the only ones I invited were my parents, grandparents, and my sister. However, when it was less than 4 months until the wedding, my sister was found to be pregnant. To be safe, my sister decided to absent herself, so in the end, only my parents and grandparents attended. My grandparents were happy to participate, but my parents clearly disliked the idea. However, they couldn't refuse due to their status, so they participated reluctantly. The same was true for Matthew's parents. They didn't seem happy at all, but because some of their foundation's associates and people they knew were attending, they reluctantly agreed to come. But both sets of parents were good at maintaining appearances, so in front of the other guests, they said things they didn't really think, such as, "We struggled with his illness, but we're glad that he has grown up so well," or, "We're proud of our child, who has lived strongly without being defeated by prejudice," all the while pretending to be moved to tears. The guests, fooled by our parents' false tears and words, even shed a few sympathetic tears, which only added to my astonishment at their audacity in wanting to be seen in a good light despite everything. But Matthew was not one to silently endure our parents' deceit. When it was time for the groom's letter to be read aloud, he chose that moment to speak about his past. He spoke about how he had endured a difficult time as a student because of prejudice and discrimination due to his skin disease. Despite his condition not being contagious, no one would touch anything he had touched. But meeting and marrying me had given him a more positive outlook. He also said, "Both my wife and I have received terrible treatment from our own parents. My wife was constantly compared to her older sister and was verbally abused her whole life. When she stopped going to school due to cruel comments from her classmates about her facial disease in high school, her parents never took her seriously and even said she should apologize to anyone who had to confess to her because of her faith. This hurt her so deeply that she could hardly go outside. I too was frequently berated by my parents about my skin, being called dirty over and over again. Here is the proof." With that, he played a recording of his parents berating him for his skin condition. The voice recording included terrible comments like, "Your skin makes us uncomfortable to look at," and "We should have never had a child with such dirty skin." His parents tried to stop the recording, but it was too late. The cold stares of the listeners pierced them, and they were dumbstruck. My parents also seemed extremely uncomfortable as whispers circulated around them. Despite the awkward conclusion to our wedding ceremony, many of the invited guests expressed their understanding towards us, with comments like, "You've worked hard until now," and "We'll keep supporting you." However, this public revelation later became a big issue. It turned out that Matthew's parents headed a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting disabled individuals, based on the principle of creating a society where people with disabilities can live easily. The revelation that they had been cruel to their own child who suffered from a skin disease became a problem. Eventually, the criticism and opposition from those around them didn't stop, and they were forced to step down from their leadership positions in the organization. As for my parents, it was revealed that they had accepted a substantial dowry to marry me off to Matthew, and they started being referred to as beasts who sold their own child for money by those around them. However, they squandered that dowry for their own selfish desires, and with no knowledge whatsoever, decided to dabble in stocks, leading to a huge loss. Eventually, they ended up in debt due to the tune of over $200,000, far exceeding the amount of the dowry they received. They had the audacity to ask for our help, but we firmly refused. Even when they came knocking a few more times, we moved away and changed our phone numbers. Now, we're living peacefully together. I guess there really is such a thing as a destined meeting. I am incredibly happy right now. Though the start was rocky, meeting Matthew and marrying him has made me feel truly blessed. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope to see you again in the next video.
It might be common for families to have conflicts or financial issues. Yet, there are probably also families who are somehow pulling it together and making an effort to get through everyday life. It's pretty clear which one is happier, don't you think? My name is Michelle. I've been called an oddball since I was a child. I don't know what's different about me. I only think I'm different because people say so. Being called different isn't a problem, but the real issue is being shunned by my own parents. I ended up having a lonely childhood. I have been sensitive to people's emotions and I can somehow read their minds. I don't know why I can do this. It's not like I can always see or feel it, but it's as natural to me as moving my hand or breathing. So I found it strange and couldn't understand why others couldn't do the same. There was a time when I felt a sinister aura or emotion, or whatever you call it, from a colleague my father brought home from work. I warned my mother to be careful with that person, but she didn't listen. Later on, that colleague managed my father into signing a contract as a guarantor for a loan. Although my mother didn't take my advice, when my father stepped away from the table with his colleague, I told him, "Dad, something is telling me that the word joint is dangerous. I don't know what joint means, but please be careful." So, my father hesitated and refused to sign as a joint guarantor. Thanks to that, when my colleague went bankrupt and couldn't repay the debt, my father was able to avoid shouldering all the debt. Another day, when I was shopping with my mother, I felt a wave of discomfort coming from behind us. When I turned around, I felt this wave coming from a man wearing sunglasses and a hat. "Mom, let's take that side street." Saying this, I grabbed my mother's hand and moved to the side street. My mother was confused and asked what was wrong, but just as we moved to the side street, we heard a shout of "Thief!" from the street we were just on. The man with the negative aura had snatched a woman's purse who was walking in front of him and ran off. The woman who had her purse snatched fell over from the momentum and got hurt pretty bad. If we hadn't moved to the side street and continued walking, the man's target would have been my mother. Such things happened frequently, and I was labeled as a strange and mysterious child. And paradoxically, my parents began to avoid me. I was lonely and isolated. What seemed normal to me was not perceived as normal by others. I began to keep my mind to myself, since being the strange, weird, and spooky child is who I am to others. I stopped expressing that, even if I felt something, it was something normal people don't feel. It was because I understood that if I didn't say something, they wouldn't say I was a weird kid, that I was just like a normal kid. I have a sister, Amy, who's 3 years younger than me. Unlike me, Amy's a regular kid. As the years go by, I find myself growing darker, retreating more into my shell. But Amy just gets cuter and more charming. It's clear who anyone would prefer. Our parents clearly started to favor Amy over me. Amy is such a lovely girl, but Michelle seems to be a bit on the darker side. Indeed, Michelle has become less odd lately, but she's still a bit different, isn't she? What they call odd was me refraining from talking about things only I could sense. It was my way of dealing with the world. I was fed up with how this power of mine was torturing me, and I was trying hard to suppress it. I wondered if my attempts to hide myself and appear normal were ironically making me seem abnormal, or if once labeled as the odd kid, the image just couldn't be erased. I grew up without receiving much love from my parents. On the other hand, Amy received all the love, including my share. Amy, who was pampered and raised, sensed my parents being cold and distant towards me. She started to look down on me. "I don't like being around you. It feels like your gloominess rubs off on me. I'm so cute, but your loner image brings me down." She started to insult me whenever she got the chance. Our parents just lightly scolded Amy, but they never seriously tried to correct her. When I was in 8th grade and Amy was in 5th grade, she was scouted by a talent agency on the street. "I knew it! It's because I'm cute. They said I could even appear on TV. Amy, pleased with herself, started dreaming big, and our parents didn't seem entirely against it. You should calm down and think carefully. I sensed something shady about this. I spoke up, expressing the intuition that I had long suppressed because I didn't want Amy to get into trouble. Amy, who didn't know about my unique ability, said, "What's your problem? Are you just jealous because you're not cute and nobody approached you? Don't say weird things and stop interfering with me." She seemed furious. Even my parents, who knew about me, either forgot about it or were too excited about Amy standing on the glamorous stage, sided with Amy and criticized me. After that, I resolved to remain silent again. I told myself that there was nothing good in saying unnecessary things. One day, a student teacher came to my junior high school. He was a male college student who graduated from the school and aspired to be a physical education teacher. As he shared his dreams about education and gave a strong greeting, the teacher and students, especially the female students, were charmed. When he responded cheerfully to the girls' excited cheers, I sensed a dark aura from him. I had always vowed to hide myself and not reveal my unique abilities. But seeing my classmates potentially in danger, I decided to break my self-imposed rule. I chose a teacher who seemed understanding and talked to them. "I know this is sudden, but please believe me and help me." The teacher was puzzled by my sudden request, but she agreed to stake out a certain location after school just as I asked. I didn't tell the teacher the details. I had no reason to think they would believe me, but the fact that they agreed to help without any explanation might mean they're not an ordinary person either. And the next day, the school was in an uproar. A male student teacher was arrested for violating a public nuisance prevention ordinance. The location where the teacher staked out was near the girls' restroom, and within 15 minutes of starting the stakeout, the student teacher appeared, entered the girls' restroom, and installed a video camera. The teacher caught him in the act. Thanks to that, female students were saved from being secretly filmed, and their dignity was protected. Meanwhile, my sister, who was scouted by a talent agency, proudly joined the agency, but there were no real lessons or auditions. She only had to pay expensive membership and lesson fees. Then, suddenly, the agency closed down, leaving an empty shell. In short, my sister was scammed. She cried and screamed, directing her anger at me. "It's all because you said weird things! My future is ruined! It's all your fault!" It didn't make any sense, but my sister seemed to truly believe it. Maybe that's the only way she could handle it, but for me, it was a disaster and a nuisance. Our parents didn't say such unreasonable things, but their attitude became more distant towards me and more supportive of my sister. I ended up feeling lonely again, as the odd one out. I was happy that I could help everyone at school, but I was terrified that my actions would corner myself. That's when I received a call from the teacher who had listened to my story, asking me to come to the staff room. Worried that I would be labeled as strange again, I opened the door to the teacher's staff room. "You knew something like that was going to happen, didn't you?" The teacher asked me in a low voice without any preamble. Thinking there was no point in pretending, I gathered my courage and told the teacher about my mysterious power. "I thought so. I know there are very few people like you." For the first time, someone showed understanding for my situation. The teacher said they knew someone with a power like mine, and that's why they could understand. Actually, that person is my aunt, and I've been listening to her stories for a long time. You must be worried about a lot of things because of your power. Maybe getting advice from someone who's been in your shoes will help clear your mind. Saying that, the teacher introduced me to the person. The person looked at me with kind eyes and said, "It's natural to be worried," but you don't need to suffer. I was drawn to their gentle yet deep eyes that seemed to see through everything. The person's name was Haley, and she had the same kind of power as me since she was a child. and she had experienced a lot of struggles and hiding herself throughout her life. The stories from my senior who had gone through the same experiences helped me release my worries and doubts. From this day on, my interactions with Haley began. I called Haley my mentor, but she just gave a wry smile and said, "Please don't." Thanks to Haley, or rather my mentor, I changed. I had been living my life hiding as a quiet, unnoticeable existence. But as my consciousness transformed, I gradually began to live a normal life as an ordinary girl. However, since the incident with the talent agency, I have not been able to reconcile with my sister. If anything, it feels like we're drifting apart. It's become normal for her not to talk to me, and when she does, it's just to complain or insult me for no reason. I often have no idea what triggers her mood switches. My power couldn't predict my sister's emotional changes either.
Just because you got into college doesn't mean you're all that. It's not even that great of a level, and you're so happy-go-lucky.
My sister, who had been expected to get into her top choice high school, ended up at her second choice safety school. Because of that, she got mad when I got into my first choice college. It's not like I'm full of myself or brag to her. She just disses me because of her own assumptions. Our parents only try to appease my upset sister and keep their distance from me, as if telling me to stay away from her. It seemed that my sister didn't like the fact that I had become brighter since meeting my mentor. To my sister, I had to be a dark and gloomy girl who was inferior to her. But my sister is really smart. It was surprising that she failed her high school entrance exams. Of course, she was filled with frustration, and she poured all of that into studying at her new high school. As a result, she was at the top of her class for all 3 years and got accepted into a prestigious national university in one shot.
I got into the most difficult university. Your college doesn't even come close to mine.
I lightly responded with, "That's true," to my satisfied sister because I knew there was nothing good to come from getting too involved with her. However, my sister thought that my light reaction was belittling her accomplishments and unleashed a barrage of verbal abuse at me. Both my parents were at their wits' end with my sister, who couldn't be calmed down once she lost her temper, and all they could do was watch nervously. My parents blamed me for causing the trouble and eventually ended up calling me a troublemaker. I wanted to argue back about who the real problem child was, but I always swallowed my words to avoid complicating things further. Setting aside my sister's issues, as I approached college graduation, I had to seriously confront my own career path. Although I was no longer as introverted as I used to be, I still struggled with socializing and had little confidence in building good relationships with others. My ability allowed me to detect people's negative emotions. While I could sense positive emotions as well, it seemed people were more prone to negative ones, which made detecting such negativity painful for me. Throughout my school life, I was tormented by these swirling negative emotions and had come close to losing faith in people. Could someone like me really manage to work at a company? I decided to consult my mentor about this dilemma. I wanted to learn how she had overcome similar issues, as I was sure she had faced them as well.
I have experienced the same worries as you. Maybe you should consider doing the kind of work I do.
My mentor used to work as a fortune teller and a counselor, helping people resolve their problems. She could use her abilities to their fullest extent and contribute to the world and people around her. Also, she was able to work freelance, which meant she didn't have to belong to any organization, and there were fewer chances of getting entangled in human relationships or being affected by other people's emotions.
It's the perfect job for people like us.
Encouraged by my mentor, I decided to pursue the same line of work. She taught me everything from how to do the job to how to acquire clients. Nowadays, thanks to the internet, it's possible to work from home without any issues. When I told my parents and sister that I would not seek employment after graduation and work from home instead, they responded,
"What's that? What kind of job is that? Seems so dumb."
You'll be home all the time? At least make sure to do the housework.
Can you even make a living doing that? How will you cover living expenses? Well, as long as you contribute to the household, do whatever you want.
While I expected such a response from my parents, it made me feel a little lonely that they didn't support me more. I felt sad thinking about their demands for housework and money. My mood darkened, and so my life working from home began. At first, I didn't have any job requests, and I struggled day by day. But with my mentor's help, I gradually got the hang of it and started to make a living. For about a year, I couldn't contribute financially to the household, so I focused on doing the housework. My dad seemed unsatisfied, but my mom was relieved and kept him in check. After about a year, when I finally started contributing financially, my dad mocked me by saying,
"Finally, you're able to earn some pocket change, huh?"
But I could tell that he was actually quite satisfied with the money. However, even though I was contributing, the amount of housework I had to do didn't decrease, and our lives remained unchanged. Then, after another 2 years, my sister graduated from college and secured a job at a foreign company.
Unlike you, I'm an elite. You're just unemployed, living at the bottom of the barrel. It's so depressing to have you as a sister.
My sister, who had successfully landed a job, started to belittle me for working from home.
What are you even doing working from home? That's just like playing. You're nothing more than a parasite living at home.
At times, she'd say,
"It's really weird not to work outside. I'm working my butt off, earning everyone's respect, and now I've been promoted to team leader. My pay is going to increase, and I'm probably earning about 10 times more than you. There's no way a homebody like you can earn that much."
My sister, who was promoted to team leader after only a year and a half in the company, kept one-upping me and looking down on me. She boasts about her good salary, but hardly contributes any money to the household, and she doesn't help with the chores at all. Laundry, cleaning, preparing meals, everything is dumped onto Mom and me. When I say Mom and me, Mom mostly leaves it to me, so I'm basically carrying everything. Whenever I say to her, "Amy, you should take care of yourself a little. You shouldn't just spend all your money on fun. You should contribute to the household too," she just dismisses me saying,
"You, the unemployed, can handle the chores. I'm saving my money for my future."
Our parents also just let her do as she pleases for some inexplicable reason of, "It's Amy, it can't be helped." I was used to my current lifestyle, and it was a comfortable environment for me to work, so I wanted to keep it that way. But I was starting to consider how to take care of myself. And then came the bombshell announcement from my sister.
"I'm getting married!"
Without any prior warning, both our parents and I were taken aback as she continued,
"He's really rich. A real elite with an annual income of over $20 million. Oh, sorry for finding happiness before you, but marriage is just a pipe dream for unemployees like you, isn't it?"
And she said she would bring her boyfriend over the next Sunday. With the rapid-fire succession of sudden developments, Sunday came as we were still reeling. The man my sister brought along looked like a successful young man, impeccably dressed with a sharp suit. "Nice to meet you. My name is Danielle. I would like to ask for your permission to marry Amy." His greeting was completely proper, and he showed good manners.
"See? Isn't he wonderful? Just as I said. I'm going to be so happy with this man."
"So, Danielle, what do you do for a living?" Dad managed to ask a question while being overwhelmed by the boyfriend's aura. "Yes, I'm currently training at a company that my father knows." We were puzzled by the word training, and then Amy said gleefully,
"His father is the president of a company. He's training outside now to take over the presidency in the future."
My sister seemed over the moon about the prospect of becoming a future president's wife. Afterwards, we had various conversations and Amy's boyfriend left stylishly. There were a few things that made me raise an eyebrow in the conversation that followed, but my parents were thrilled with the high-spec man. However, I felt an inexplicable dark shadow from that seemingly refreshing and good-natured man, Daniel. It's something only I can feel, so I don't know how to explain it. However, I could no longer remain silent, fearing that marrying a man with insecurities would make my sister unhappy. Amy, you've only been dating him for less than 3 months, so you might want to understand him a little more before deciding to get married. I had a strong gut feeling warning me of something, but I was unable to articulate it properly. All I could do was attempt to caution Amy using general advice.
What are you talking about, sis? He's an elite and a future CEO. You won't find anyone better than him. Oh, I see. You're jealous, aren't you? You're bitter because you're comparing your life to my happy one. Poor jobless sis.
Even our parents got angry at me for getting in the way of a rich man becoming part of our family. You're just unemployed, so at the very least, stop interfering with your sister's happiness. It was clear to me that our parents were hoping to secure a comfortable old age by marrying Amy off to a wealthy man. Frustrated by my inability to effectively communicate my concern about the dark shadow, I sensed looming over Amy. My head was spinning. In the meantime, the two got engaged, and a meeting between both families took place. Daniel's parents, like him, carried an air of freshness about them, but I felt the same ominous cloud hidden behind them. However, I was unable to convey this danger to my overjoyed sister and parents, and before I knew it, the day of the wedding had arrived.
The CEO of our company is attending today's reception. Can you comprehend how much I'm appreciated and anticipated in my company? I guess it's a kind of honor that a shut-in like you wouldn't understand.
Before leaving the house, my sister gleefully shared this news with me without me even asking. She always included some derogatory words directed at me. At the wedding ceremony, held at a hotel, the couple who pledged eternal love to each other entered the reception hall. Watching my sister, who was beaming with joy, I worried about how long this happiness would last. As my sister mentioned, the CEO made a keynote speech. Naturally, it was full of praise for my sister, which delighted her. Once the speeches were over, food and drinks were served to each table. There were all sorts of delicious-looking dishes, but I started to feel a sense of discomfort gradually. That's because no dishes were being served in front of me. At first, I thought it was just late, but other tables were already being served drinks, appetizers, and so on, one after another. Clearly, something was off. Nothing was being delivered to me. People at the same table began to notice this oddity and started whispering among themselves. At that moment, my sister came over to me and whispered into my ear with laughter in her voice.
We didn't prepare free meals for the unemployed. After all, it's such a waste to serve such food to a jobless person. You should just eat potato chips at home. Just leave your gift money and go home. This outrageous remark was spoken loudly in my ear, and my ears rang. Daniel, sitting at the groom's table, was grinning and nodding greatly. Even our parents, who at first seemed surprised, said, "Well, it's true. Michelle is jobless after all." I was first taken aback. Then a wave of anger surged up within me. I never thought you'd stoop this low, sis. Mom and Dad, this is unacceptable. How could you accept such rudeness? My parents just scowled at me, never bothering to reprimand my sister. Fine, I get it. I'm leaving, but don't come crying to me later. What's with the parting shot? The howling of a sore loser, I guess.
Amidst the chaos of this unbelievable turn of events, a man suddenly stood up. Sorry to interrupt, I'm the groom's brother, Kyle. My brother and parents are trash, but it seems the bride is even worse. I can't take it anymore. The man who introduced himself as Kyle continued to speak. Dad, your company went bankrupt 6 months ago, didn't it? Pretending to still be a CEO is just a scheme to mooch off the bride and her family. Daniel will never become a CEO, yet he still plans to leech off his wife while pretending otherwise. After all, he's unemployed now. The man's words stirred up a commotion among the guests, but the person who was most heated up was my sister.
What do you mean? You lied to me?
What do you mean unemployed? A storm of questions with a red-faced expression. Her face gradually turned from red to blue, her eyes welling up with tears. Our parents, their assumptions proven wrong, began to yell and curse. The anguished cries of my family echoed throughout the venue. The groom and his parents remained silent, looking sulky. In reality, before the ceremony, I had received a confession and apology from Kyle and asked him to speak his mind without reservation if something happened during the reception. Then, as my sister was berating Daniel with a wrathful face, another man couldn't take it anymore and stood up. It was the president of my sister's company. Enough already. This is embarrassing. You have no right to criticize the groom. What do you think about your terrible attitude towards your own sister? The president's angry voice made my sister's face contort in fear. For one, I didn't attend your wedding for your sake. I wouldn't have come if you weren't the sister of Michelle. Suddenly, my name was mentioned by the president, and my sister's eyes widened in surprise. Huh? Who are you talking about? Michelle is a goddess to many of us business owners, rescuing countless companies from the brink of collapse. In fact, with the guidance of my mentor, I had been working as an advisor for corporate revitalization and growth, starting with fortune telling and life consultation. Although I lacked business knowledge, I used my abilities to show companies the path they should take. All my advice was spot on, and the companies that sought my help experienced a rapid resurgence in business, achieving a V-shaped recovery. As a result, I had earned titles like teacher and goddess. My sister's company had also consulted with me 6 months ago, and thanks to my advice, it had been reborn as a stronger enterprise. The president, grateful for my assistance, attended the wedding today as well. I had no idea! You're not just a basement-dwelling unemployed nobody, are you? Thanks to my thriving career, I now earn several times what you do. Despite contributing significantly to the household income, our parents never seemed to care about me. I wonder what they thought that money was. Uh-oh, we thought Amy provided that money. The parents seem to have misunderstood the situation. There's no way Amy would have been contributing money to the house. The wedding reception turned into a chaotic scene and was called off. Naturally, all the guests were fully refunded their wedding gifts. I was planning on using those wedding gifts to pay for the venue. What am I supposed to do now? Besides, they've also been relying on Daniel's income and have already signed a contract for an apartment under my name. I can't afford it on my own, especially now that he's unemployed. Daniel, in response to his sobbing bride, retorted, You're the one who signed the contract. I don't know anything about that. I want to divorce you, fraudster! The wedding was a complete disaster. It was a result of gratuitous malice towards others. She may argue that there were reasons for her malicious behavior, but there was no way that was going to fly. Afterward, Amy divorced Daniel and claimed alimony. As Daniel was jobless and his parents didn't have much, she couldn't receive much alimony. She barely managed to pay for the wedding venue, let alone the apartment she had contracted. The place that was supposed to be their love nest was never occupied and was canceled. However, the debt didn't simply vanish, and Amy found herself heavily burdened by the loans. Moreover, her outrageous behavior at the wedding was quickly known among her colleagues, which led to a rapid decline in her reputation. The CEO had no choice but to demote her. With no place left in the company and having lost her pride as an elite, Amy wanted to quit and run away, but she had to bear the embarrassment for the sake of loan repayment, continuing with a trivial job in a hardly noticeable basement storage room. Daniel and his parents, who had failed in their plan to leech off Amy, were now scraping by with occasional day labor. Naturally, Sean's elder brother Ethan had cut off all ties with his parents and brother. The parents quickly gave up on Amy when she hit rock bottom and tried to cozy up to me instead. To them I said, I've had enough of being manipulated by you. I'm cutting ties. Goodbye forever. I declared this and moved out to start a new life in a newly rented apartment. They took in the fallen Amy, who was struggling to make ends meet. Amy's salary was drastically reduced, and she couldn't possibly contribute to the household expenses. Of course, I stopped the money that I was contributing to the house as well. Unable to lower their standard of living, our parents quickly became exhausted and are panting every day. My work is going so well, and I'm able to guide many companies and individuals in the right direction. In fact, I started dating Kyle after the whole wedding incident, and he recently proposed. If things go well, marriage could be on the cards. I'm looking forward to building a happy life with Kyle, a man of pure heart with no dark shadows.
My name is Mia Yates. I'm 23 years old and work from home. I have a kind older brother, 5 years my senior, who is currently engaged. His fiancée is named Natalie, and she's 26 years old. Her personality is the complete opposite of mine. Whereas I'm not good with interacting with people, Natalie is very lively and easily makes friends. Natalie has already become close to our parents and often comes to our house alone. Today, too, she came without contacting us in advance. When the doorbell rang, my mom knew it was Natalie and greeted her with, "Welcome." Natalie came into the living room with my mom, saying, "I'm back." Then she looked at me with a baffled expression. "Mia, you're still at home?" She spoke without even greeting me. I replied, "I'm working from home," to which she retorted, "Enough with that, you need to get a job." Unable to argue, I decided to retreat silently back to my workspace. My room is a soundproof room, added to our existing house. I received permission from my parents and designated the layout myself. It's my favorite place. Of course, I paid for all these modifications myself. This room is my castle, so I keep it locked and don't let anyone in. To enter, one must unlock the soundproof door and open another door inside. As soon as I entered, I vented my frustrations, exclaiming, "I told her I'm working! Why does she make me repeat myself?" Since I couldn't say it directly to Natalie. Shouting until I felt relieved helped me to forget the unpleasantness. Around lunchtime, a small light bulb that serves as my bell in my room started to blink. Thinking it's probably time for lunch, I left my room and headed to the living room where lunch was already prepared at the dining table. My mom said, "Let's have lunch together," so I sat down at my usual spot, only to find Natalie sitting across from me looking displeased. "You get hungry even though you don't work. Don't you ever think about making your father and mother feel at ease? You're just like a parasite." I silently kept my head down and listened to Natalie's words. Once my parents sat at the table and said grace, I also said grace and started eating. Natalie seemed unhappy with my parents, who didn't scold me even though I didn't work. "Your father and mother are too lenient with you, Mia. I can't feel secure about marrying into this family if this continues." She continued eating her lunch angrily. My parents smiled and said, "Don't worry, just marry into our family." But Natalie didn't seem satisfied and continued to express her concerns to them. "I can't be reassured. What happens if you two can't take care of Mia anymore? Do you expect me or my future children to look after her?" She assumed I'd be a shut-in for life, leeching off others, so I stopped eating and hung my head low, mentally contradicting her claims. Seeing this, my mother told Natalie, "Mia does work, you know. Don't worry." But Natalie wouldn't stop. At 23, look at her appearance. Braided hair, thick glasses, and always wearing sweats. Who would believe she's working, looking like this? Frustrated, I countered in a soft voice. Appearance has nothing to do with work. This seemed to upset her even more, and she grew angrier. "Well, what kind of job do you do then? Say it," she demanded, glaring at me. I became so scared that I couldn't say anything. It was my mother who answered for me. "Only our family knows about Mia's job. I'm sorry, but we can't discuss it right now." Hearing this, Natalie stood up and stormed off, saying, "So I'm not in this family? Is that it?" I apologized to my parents for causing such a scene. My father reassured me. "Don't worry about it, Mia. Just do what you love," he said with a smile. I lightened my heart and I decided to continue with dinner. Over the meal, I proposed, After my brother's wedding, I'll make sure I can tell Natalie about my job. My parents seemed to agree, and their expressions eased up, saying, that might be a good idea. After lunch, I started working again once the cleanup was done. In the evening, as usual, I went grocery shopping with my mom while my father tended to the vegetables in our garden, watering and preparing for harvest. When my mom and I returned from the supermarket, we found Natalie in tears in the living room, with my father seated beside her. Worried, my mom asked, "Natalie, what's the matter? Why are you crying so much?" Natalie clung to my mother and sobbed even harder, unable to speak. Seeing the troubled look on my father's face, I asked him what had happened. I heard a loud noise from inside the house when I was in the garden. I rushed toward the sound. He trailed off, pointing to a crowbar and hammer lying on the table. Instantly, I realized it's my room and ran towards it. When I arrived at the front of my room, the door was badly damaged, as if someone had tried to force it open with a crowbar and a hammer. I was frozen in place, a mix of shock and fear gripping me. Then my father contacted my brother who lived in the company dormitory. It seemed that my brother promised to rush over after his work, so I told my father, I'll stay in my room until my brother arrives, and decided to calm down in my room. After settling down in my room, I called my company and was able to get permission to inform my future sister-in-law, who would soon become part of our family, about the nature of my job after their marriage. Seeing the room light flicker, I figured my brother had arrived. When I left my room, I was surprised to see my brother already at the door and let out a gasp. With an apology, "Sorry to startle you," my brother said, not looking at me but at the door. I imagined he must have been shocked by what Natalie had done. When I told him, "Don't worry about it, I'll replace it myself," he responded, "No, that won't do. Natalie will compensate for this." Taking my hand, my brother led me to the living room where Natalie and my parents were. As soon as we entered, he addressed Natalie. "I had no idea you were capable of such violence." Everyone stared at my rarely angered brother. He demanded, "Apologize to Mia properly and compensate for the door." Natalie began to apologize tearfully to my brother, saying, I'm sorry, but my brother snapped, "The apology is not for me," and glared at her fiercely. I told my brother it's okay now, but my brother didn't take his eyes off Natalie. Natalie turned to me, knelt down, and apologized. "I won't do something like this again. I will compensate for it." I accepted her apology and decided to put the incident behind me. But I wanted to know why this had happened, so I asked Natalie. She replied, "I thought if I didn't have a place to hide, I would have to work." Hearing this, I wondered whether I should tell her about the nature of my job before the wedding, which troubled me. However, it would go against company policy, so I decided not to say anything for now. Tense atmosphere between my brother and Natalie bothered me, so I brought out 2 live concert tickets from my room and handed one to each of them. Looking at the tickets, Natalie exclaimed, "These are for Ames' concert," and turned bright red with excitement. She turned to my brother and said, "Let's go." Her face was filled with joy. My brother asked me, "Are you sure? These are hard to get." When I replied, "I happened to get them. You can use them as a peace offering if you'd like." My brother also looked delighted. Seeing them so happy made me feel joyous too. From there, the good vibes returned as before. Everyone was able to forget about the damaged door and enjoy their meal. On the day of the live concert, while I was out, it appears that Natalie had excitedly visited my house to express her gratitude to me. Since I, who was usually home, wasn't there, Natalie seemed to say to my parents, "Enjoy." Finally, Mia has decided to work outside, and it was a great day, the concert was great, and since Mia decided to start working, I'm happy, before she left. After the concert, I received a call from my brother who had separated from Natalie due to a company drinking party. My brother was thrilled, saying, "The concert was great." and continued that Natalie is actually a huge fan of AIM and has always mentioned not being able to secure the once-in-a-year concert tickets. He also mentioned that she was extremely excited to have been able to see AIM, her longtime wish, at the concert. On the way home, she seemed to have returned happily, saying, "She was adorable, she was beautiful, and her songs and lyrics were amazing." When I said, "I'm glad we made up," my brother replied, "The soundproof door we paid for as compensation cost $7,000, it seems," to which I responded, "That sounds about right." He was taken aback and exclaimed, "That's expensive." I explained to him that since it was a soundproof room I put a lot of effort into, all the components were pricey, which surprised him even more. Natalie was said to have mentioned, "The $7,000 expense hurt, but the concert made up for it." As for me, the door will be fixed, and since my brother and his friends are getting along, I felt really good about giving the ticket. However, Natalie, who still doesn't understand my work-from-home job, thought I started working outside after the concert and was happy. The moment she realized her mistake, she started calling and visiting my house daily, telling me to get a job. I was hoping to endure it until the wedding ceremony, but things only seemed to escalate. Even if I didn't want to see her until the wedding, Natalie frequently pushes the call light switch to my room. Being summoned, I leave my room and go to the living room, where she nags me with, "Get a job before the wedding," and "I don't want a jobless NEET in the family." To distract Natalie, I hand her AIM merchandise like mascots in file cases that I received from my previous company. At first, Natalie received her favorite AIM goods without question, but eventually she started to wonder and asked me, "Why do you have so much AIM merchandise?" Reluctantly, I replied, "A friend who works in relation with AIM's company gives them to me." Upon hearing this, she smiled and her mood improved even more as she said, "Please get me more tickets next time." However, there's still a problem. She seems to want more merchandise and started making a fuss about being allowed into my room, causing me trouble. I managed to stop her a few times, but I was worried that she might break the door again, so I mustered up the courage to give her a stern warning. "Natalie, if you break the door again, it won't just be the door fee this time. Last time I paid for the repairs. Next time you will be the one paying." Upon hearing this, Natalie's face turned pale. I wonder if she really was planning to do it again, I thought to myself. All I could do was hope that the wedding ceremony would be over soon so I could be free. Even after that, until the wedding day, there was never a day when Natalie visited and the call light didn't flash. I can't count how many times I shouted, "Enough already!" in my room. I tried talking to my brother about it, but he was in a resigned mode, saying, "I've told Natalie over 100 times that Mia's working, but she doesn't seem to listen to me." In my mind, I told my brother, "Hey, you should get angry, like when she broke my door." But there was no hope in relying on my brother, who had said he was busy, finishing up a ton of work before the wedding. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to go on the honeymoon. So I had no choice but to give up. Then finally, it was the day before the wedding. As expected, it seemed that both of our parents would spend the day before the wedding together, so we had a fun night reminiscing and looking at albums of us when we were young, with the 4 of us family members together after a long time. When I mentioned, "When I get married, my brother will have his own family, so it'll just be the 3 of us with our parents on the day before the wedding. It's a bit lonely." My brother replied, No, I'll come here and spend the day alone on that day." I was glad he said that. In that calm space, my brother's cell phone rang. It was a call from Natalie. When my brother answered the phone, it seemed she asked to speak with me, and he handed me the phone, saying, "Natalie wants to talk to you." When I answered the phone, she said, "Hey, something's up with AIM. She's making a big announcement tomorrow. Ask your friend who gives you the merchandise what it's about. What if she's quitting or going on hiatus?" Apparently, AIM's agency had announced on social media that there would be a major announcement tomorrow. I didn't want to be disturbed during my relaxing time with my family, so I said, "I don't know," and hung up the phone. Brother seemed to feel the same way and turned off his cell phone. When our father said, "We have to get up early tomorrow, let's go to bed now," my brother began to bow deeply and said, "Father, Mother, thank you for taking care of me so long. From now on, I will be happy with Natalie." Mom quickly responded, "That's what women do when they get married." When my brother said, "Really?" Our family ended the night before the wedding with a big laugh. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived. I told my family that I would be a little late in the morning, and my parents and brothers went ahead to the venue. When I arrived at the venue a little later, I went to the waiting room to convey my congratulations to Natalie and knocked on the door. There, Natalie, the beautiful bride, was sitting alone, fully prepared. The moment I was about to say my congratulations, the beautiful bride turned into a demon and said, "Hey, I still had something to say yesterday when you hung up the phone." I apologized, and when I asked what she wanted, she said to me, "You can go home now." I said, "But it's my brother's wedding." And she said, "I've been telling you this for a long time. Why didn't you get a job after all I've said? I don't want people to think you're part of the family." And I tried to say, "But..." Natalie walked up to me and got close to my face and said, "If I say go home, you go home," and closed the door with all her might. Feeling dejected, I retreated to a separate room that had been reserved for me. There, I had my makeup and hair done by professionals and changed into the cocktail dress I had bought for the wedding, preparing for my brother's wedding that I would not be attending. In the midst of this, I received a call from my parents. I explained the situation to them, assuring them that although I wouldn't be at the ceremony, I still intended to celebrate. Then, the wedding ceremony that I was absent from began. I decided to watch the event on the venue's monitor to get a sense of being there. There was a moment when my brother looked for me and I nearly broke down in tears. But I told myself, it's a day for celebration, not tears, and continued to watch and bless the event. After the entertainment was over, the female MC said, "We have a celebration video for the stars of today's show. Please look at the monitor." The room darkened and a video started playing on the monitor. The room erupted in screams of delight. The image on the screen was of Aim, whom Natalie loved so much, and then shared a congratulatory message. Yes, in truth, I am Aim. Congratulations on your marriage, brother and Natalie. Natalie looked surprised and turned to my brother. He seemed to be saying, "That's Mia. I've been eagerly awaiting this day, but I'm sorry I couldn't attend due to urgent matters." After giving a false excuse for my absence, I shared a simple congratulatory message, then revealed, "Natalie, I'm sorry I never told you that I'm part of your new family. However, I've decided to work overseas. We probably won't see each other in the future, so feel free to pretend we're not family. Oh, and I wasn't a shut-in. I was working in my home studio." Although I let a bit of sarcasm slip, I ended my message saying, "I wish you happiness." I'm a singer-songwriter named Aim who gained popularity on social media. My stage name, Aim, is my real name, Mia, spelled backward. I worked from home, recording songs and writing music after joining a talent agency. When the lights came back on, all eyes were on Natalie. She was as pale as a ghost and looked utterly dumbfounded. Once my job was done, I left the venue with the hair and makeup artists and other staff. Later on, my brother called. Apparently, after we left, Natalie was supposed to thank the guests and see them off, but instead, she was running around the venue looking for me. When she found I had already left, she broke down crying in front of the folding screen. What's more, I heard from friends that she's now known as the bride who isn't considered family by Aim, and my speech from the wedding has gone viral on social media. I heard she regrets what she did and can't even go out in her neighborhood anymore.